Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. Today we are going to talk about the ongoing court-martial of Navy SEAL Chief Eddie Gallagher. Let's talk about it. Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. This is Scott Reisch of Crime Talk. If you like the channel, please subscribe. If you like the video, hit that like button and hit that little bell if you would like notifications of when we put out new content or when we are going to go live. Today on the docket, only one thing to talk about. That is the case of Chief Special Warfare Operator Eddie Gallagher. For those of you who are not familiar with the case of Chief Eddie Gallagher, it is something that movies are made about. Chief Gallagher is a United States Navy SEAL, one of the toughest positions one could have in the military. This is the special operators, the ones that are silent and deadly. They are the pointy tip of that spear out there protecting America and hopefully doing good things for all. So, a little background on Chief Gallagher. He joined the Navy in 1999, and he has served in the military for some 19 years now. He has gone on 8 overseas deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I'm sure by now, most of us know somebody who has either been to Iraq or Afghanistan or known somebody's family member that's been to Iraq and Afghanistan. There was a joke there for a while that there were 2 types of people in the military, those that were going to Iraq and Afghanistan and those that were coming back. But 8 tours is a lot, okay? The stress of being in a combat zone to dealing with that type of intensity for 8 deployments, that's just not 8 years, but also the buildups that go with it, the time that you're away from your family. And these SEAL guys are always on call. They're always a high-tempo type of situation. So Chief Gallagher, he goes in as a medic. He also becomes a sniper. He becomes an explosive expert. This puts him in very, very high demand. He's been decorated for valor, and he's received 2 Bronze Stars for his service. He has received positive evaluations from his superiors with the SEALs and served as an instructor in the SEAL Buds program, which is the people that train and identify future SEALs. He goes by the nickname of Blade, which will be somewhat significant in the case that he is currently in right now in California. So this is not the first time that Chief Gallagher has attracted controversy. He was investigated in 2010 of killing a young girl in Afghanistan. He was cleared of that. He also allegedly tried to run over a Navy police officer in his car in 2014 after being detained at a traffic stop. By 2015, according to some, he had acquired a reputation of someone who was more interested in fighting terrorists and less interested in compliance with the rules. In his 8th deployment in 2017, Chief Gallagher aggressive side was seemingly amplified, especially during the Battle of Mosul, wherein the U.S. Forces missions was intended to be more advisory than direct combat. Gallagher was the subject of numerous number of reports from his fellow SEAL team members in actions of not keeping with the rules of war. For those not familiar with the rules of war, you can't shoot POWs. You're not supposed to shoot at people parachuting into a combat zone. You're not supposed to shoot civilians. You're not supposed to bomb churches, mosques, things of that nature. Don't harm civilians, things of that nature. Goes back to the Geneva Convention long time ago, early 1900s. Nothing new about that, and special operators are certainly going to be aware of those situations. Every person that goes in the military becomes aware of the rules of war and combat, whether you're a cook or whether you are a Navy SEAL. Although Chief Gallagher had a number of reports of misconduct, really nothing was acted upon by the Navy SEALs. It wasn't until some of these reports were put forward outside the Navy SEAL chain of command. Did anything happen? NCIS, the National Criminal Investigative Service, basically the investigative branch in the Navy, began an investigation, and on September 11th of 2018, Chief Gallagher was arrested at Camp Pendleton and charged with premeditated murder, attempted murder, obstruction of justice, and a litany of other crimes under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Article 134 is the catch-all, so if we haven't thought of the crime in the previous 133 articles, Article 134 is the catch-all. And under that article, Chief Gallagher was charged with obstruction of justice, wrongfully posing with an unofficial picture of a human casualty, wrongfully completing a re-enlistment ceremony next to a human casualty, wrongfully operating a drone over a human casualty, wrongful use of a controlled substance, because apparently these SEALs like to stay buff and fit, and they were using some prohibited dietary or steroid type of drugs. But that's the least of the chief's problems. This case has also become very familiar as the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, has commented on this case, wondering why Chief Gallagher was held in custody up until a few months ago. President Trump also has asked the Department of Justice as well as the Department of Defense for reasons considering a pardon of Chief Gallagher if he was convicted. The facts of this particular case allege that in May of 2017, Iraqi forces captured an enemy fighter who had been wounded by an airstrike. Video images showed the bleeding fighter, who was then thought to be between the ages of 12 and 17 years old. This enemy combatant was being brought to the SEAL platoon on the hood of a truck, and Chief Gallagher and others cutting away his clothing to give aid to this enemy combatant is what the video apparently shows. The New York Times has seen this video, and it says that it shows that a medic had put tubes used to treat a collapsed lung in the side of the young man, as well as cut an emergency airway in his throat. Now, this is going to be significant in the trial, and we'll get to that in just a second. Navy investigators then alleged that one SEAL medic was kneeling over the fighter's head, treating him when Chief Gallagher walked up and without saying a word, took a handmade knife and stabbed a teenager several times in the neck and in the side. Apparently, several investigators as well as two SEALs confirmed those events. It's then alleged that members of the platoon posed with Chief Gallagher as he held up the head by the hair with one hand and held the knife in the other. Photos show Chief Gallagher then raising his right hand to perform a re-enlistment ceremony over the dead body, while another SEAL member holds the American flag. Shortly after this episode, it's alleged that Chief Gallagher took a photo, texted this photo to others, saying that I got him with my hunting knife. At earlier proceedings at the Article 32 hearing, which is equivalent to a preliminary hearing, it became clear on the cross-examination that some of the events that were alleged, i.e. the stabbing, there was no physical evidence to corroborate that. In fact, the body showed that there were no stab wounds in the side. There was testimony brought out at the Article 32 hearing on cross-examination that the teenager probably died of injuries sustained from the airstrike. So Chief Gallagher's trial has started, and we're about a week into the proceedings. Court-martial has started of Chief Gallagher, and the jury is composed of 5 Marines and 2 sailors. And in this case, like any court-martial, it starts out just like any other trial. There's opening statements, then the evidence is presented. And in the prosecution case in chief, the government has brought forward witnesses and actually brought forward a medic who was there treating this young man and apparently was with Chief Gallagher when this alleged incident took place. But this is the stuff that movies are made of. These are those great courtroom moments. So one of the witnesses was a special warfare operator, first class, Corey Scott. He testified that he saw Gallagher stab the injured teenager with his knife while deployed in 2017, but under cross-examination stated that Gallagher was not the one who caused the death. Special Warfare Operator Scott testified that he was the medic that killed the young man. He testified that he asphyxiated the young man because he was concerned basically of what the Iraqi troops would do to this ISIS fighter, and basically did it as a mercy killing. Why is this significant? This is not what the prosecution thought they were going to get from this particular witness. They thought that this witness was going to come in and corroborate the allegations that Chief Gallagher killed this young fighter. But when this witness, Special Warfare Operator Scott, says that he did it, he just confessed to murder. Does he have anything to worry about? Probably not as to murder. Why? Because he was given a grant of immunity by the prosecutors in this particular case. What's the significance of that? Anything he says during the course of his testimony cannot be used against him in any way. And there's no other evidence of this, at least from what we know in the general public, about this from anybody. The prosecutors didn't expect it, and on redirect of Special Warfare Operator Scott, the prosecutor basically called him a liar, saying that we had met some 6 times, had given interviews, had provided statements, and you never once happened to mention, oh, by the way, I'm the one who caused the death. Should the prosecution just fold? The Navy said as of today that they're going forward on this case simply because they're going to let the jury decide. Did this witness lie for the benefit of Chief Gallagher? Who knows? The witness, Petty Officer Scott, is going to have some explaining to do as it relates to his command. He could be charged with perjury. He could be charged with false statements. Either way, his Navy career may be over. What usually happens when somebody is charged with murder, and if somebody else confesses to that murder on the stand, under oath, under a grant of immunity, it's usually pretty good for the defense. We will have to see what takes place at the end of the prosecution's case in chief if the judge will throw this out. And one of the witnesses today in the proceedings testified that there's really 2 groups within the SEAL team. Those that think Chief Gallagher is a great Navy SEAL operator. Others say that he is reckless and basically brings a bad name to the SEALs, to the United States Navy, and to the United States in general for going around maliciously, recklessly killing unarmed combatants and or civilians. Apparently, there's a secret Snapchat channel or group text message that these Navy SEALs operate under, and the witness who was testifying for the prosecution today on cross-examination had to admit that he had sent text messages stating that he worked with a bunch of people who didn't care about killing civilians, criticized the judge, threatened to burn the courtroom down, and that, in fact, if the courtroom did burn down at the Naval Base in San Diego, he probably did it. This case is not over. It's going to get even more interesting as the case develops over the next week or so. It's also going to be very interesting to see if Chief Gallagher will testify. As his defense attorney, if I was his defense attorney, I certainly would advise him not to testify for the simple reason that somebody else has just testified under oath that he was the one that committed the murder, not Chief Gallagher. The sundry of other miscellaneous charges are simply not that important, and he is not going to be looking at a life sentence at Fort Leavenworth. It's going to get good. And even if there's a conviction, Chief Gallagher has a lot of people in his corner stating that he is a hero and that he should be pardoned. We will have to wait and see. And when it happens, we will talk about it. Have a great day.